Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. As you guys see, I'm full of energy. Thank you, Monster Energy, for keeping me energized. I appreciate you. You guys keep me going. This is my 6th interview today. 2 more to go, but thanks to Monster Energy, I keep on going. This is going to be a fun episode. We're going to be talking about some of my favorite things: mixed martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu, mental health, business. My friend Paul, we've been friends, I think, going on 5 years now. He's been on my podcast, my old podcast. And we're just going to sit down and have some fun and talk about business a little bit, martial arts. And who knows where we might even talk about going beyond Homo sapien. Who knows what we're going to talk about? So, Paul, my brother, welcome to the show.
What is up, Richard? Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here.
It's my honor, brother, and hopefully your ears were burning up yesterday. Me and Aaron Hale were talking about how great you are, so I hope your ears were burning up. My first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Man, that's such a great question. I would say resiliency is when you can overcome obstacles, utilizing the will.
Okay, now you are you're a veteran, podcast host, coach. You do it all. So, but obviously your whole life hasn't been rainbows, Skittles, unicorns. You had to come back through some stuff. So give us a quick down and dirty about who Paul actually is.
Well, I joined the Army in 2016. No, it was 2014 as a military police officer, and I got out in 2020. And during that time, I figured out that I was on the autism spectrum. I got diagnosed when I was 25 with autism and also with OCD, which really helped explain why I was having a lot of trouble in the military, because I was dealing with panic attacks every day. My marriage was falling apart. I wasn't happy. I was overweight. Like nothing was going too well in life. And a lot of it just came back to the fact that I deal with sensory overwhelm issues, and I have a lot of trouble knowing that other people are people too, and just kind of dealing with social interactions. And it was giving me a ton of anxiety and overwhelm to the point that I was having panic attacks almost every day. And getting the autism diagnosis really helped me to learn how to cope and kind of how to heal myself and how to deal with life, and how it helped me understand myself. Because up to that point, I just thought I was going crazy. I just thought like, well, I'm the only person at work who's having a panic attack just from being in the office. Must be something wrong with me. You know, I must be crazy or something like that. I just legitimately thought I just was kind of nuts. And I just felt very different. I felt kind of like ostracized from society. And long story short, I started getting into entrepreneurship around 2016. And I started a little part-time digital marketing agency, because I realized that I didn't want to be in the military, and that it wasn't good for my mental health, and that ultimately it just wasn't a good environment for me. So I decided that I was going to get out of the military when my time was done, and I was going to go and I wanted to work online, because I'd been hearing all about being an online entrepreneur and a digital nomad and all these cool buzzwords. And that's really what I wanted to do, was just be able to work at home and not have to go to an office all day. Because I just found out real quick that working in an office is just overwhelming, just from like the phones ringing and the air not being ventilated very well. Or like I really need, or just people talking while I'm trying to do something is very hard for me. Like if I'm working on something and there's a conversation happening next to me, I'm going to have a panic attack. Like I just can't do it, especially if you add in that there's a deadline on the thing that I'm working on. You know, I've got to have it done by the end of the day before I can leave. You know, stuff like that. So just basic stuff, right, that everyone deals with in an office is just it's too much for me, is what I found. Like I just would always be in this state of overwhelm, always in this like fight or flight mode. And that's why I was so unhealthy, is because I was always just overwhelmed. And I realized that I've been overwhelmed my whole life. I've been dealing with this forever, basically. It's just, you know, once I got to the Army is when it really all came to the forefront, because there wasn't any way it wasn't, you know. So I got out of the Army in 2020, and I've been an entrepreneur ever since. Been working from home in my pajamas, and life is great. And, so I achieved that goal and I was right. It's much better for my mental health. And
right.
started Jiu-Jitsu outlet 2021 and been doing that pretty much ever since.
Now, I have a son that's on the spectrum, and right now he's a senior at Coastal Carolina, crushing it, killing it.
That's awesome.
But also he realized, okay, a lot of people would think being on the spectrum as a negative. He flipped the script and said, okay, well, it's my superpower. Yep. Now that he can dig down into, he wants to be a shark researcher. So he can dig down to where the average person can't. And like you said, he won't come up until there's a problem solved. So have you started using it as your superpower now?
Oh yeah. That was like the big thing that I figured out through therapy, was just that I just wasn't in the right environment for me. I just wasn't in the right career. I wasn't doing something I was passionate about or like what I was really meant to do. Because if you know anything about autistic people, we usually have like a thing that we're zoned in on, or maybe one or two things that we're obsessed with. And everything else just, it's like kind of fades into the background a little bit. And this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think it kind of relates to just how autistic people, we don't really know that other people are people too. And we kind of live in our own world. And that doesn't mean autistic people can't be empathetic, but just that we're kind of in our own universe, so to speak. And we don't really have, it's called mind blindness. We don't really have this awareness that people are people too, and they have their own interests and they have their things and all that kind of stuff. So for me, at least, that's kind of how it works. Like I just get so obsessed with the things that I'm into because I literally forget that there's anything else other than that thing. That's kind of how it feels. So like your son was sharks. He's probably obsessed with sharks. You know what I mean? And it's probably because
anything animals, that was his thing.
Yeah. So I bet he gets into that state where he probably forgets that there's even a world outside of that. And that's kind of the level of superpower you get to. So what I realized is if I got a career doing something that I was obsessed with, I'd be good to go. Right. And that was the case. I'm really into online business, really into entrepreneurship in general. And I love jiu-jitsu. Always been a huge fan of martial arts ever since I started 14 years ago. So started teaching last year and opened up the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet Academy, which is where we're actually doing this right now. I've got mats behind me. Going to be teaching class here in about an hour 15. And it's just, it's what I needed to do, right? It's just I needed to go on my own path and do the thing that I'm obsessed with. And then you're totally right. Then suddenly autism is a superpower because you know more than anyone about that thing. You just had to find it.
All right. So then, talking about the sensory perception, I have several family members with autism. I have a lot of friends, like my friend Sam Mitchell has his podcast, Autism Rocks and Roll. Awesome podcast, autistic host. But a lot of people with autism don't like to be touched, don't like to be in the area. So what was that like doing martial arts and then especially rolling on the ground? That's not one of your triggers?
Not as much. I know some autistic people really deal with that. I think I did it first, but you just get used to it. It becomes a part of it. And the thing is that physical touch is actually necessary for humans. And it releases a chemical called oxytocin. Yep. And I think that actually the reason, this is again, me getting into the like autism theory or whatever you want to call it. I think the reason why autistic people like me deal with that is because when you have that touch, especially if you haven't really been touched, because maybe you get overwhelmed by it, it releases that chemical. And to a hypersensitive autistic person, anytime there's a neurochemical release like that, it can actually put you deeper into overwhelm. So if you're already in fight or flight because you're shut down and you're too overloaded by your environment, anything you add into that equation is going to send you deeper into overwhelm, even if the thing is a good thing. So that's, I think, why a lot of autistic people struggle with that, because it's just too much. Not necessarily that they can't be touched, but just that they can't be touched right then. So for me, if I'm super overwhelmed and I'm feeling like I'm going to have a panic attack, don't touch me because it's going to freak me out, right? I might slap you or something like that. Like I might accidentally like try to push you away, but because I'm freaked out and I need to settle down. But if you get me in a good state, then I'm ready for a hug, you know, like I'm good. You know what I mean? So I think that most autistic people, if they're sensitive to touch, what they're really saying is that they're overwhelmed and that they're physiologically overwhelmed. And for that reason, they don't want to be touched because they're dealing with some stuff. And maybe that person is always going to feel that way, but it doesn't mean that like touch is bad for them, if that makes sense. It's just like how you get what I'm saying.
Yep. So now talking about sensory overload, because this is something I just had somebody on talking about this thing, and she actually came out with a whole line of different weighted clothes for called the Cozy Wozy for people that actually have autism and they like that weighted feeling when they sleep. But now if a person has sensory overload and they're rolling, but it's also loud in the building, does that affect them, or do they get so hyper focused where they don't even hear the crowd?
They usually get pretty hyper focused. Now, we do have a few kids here and myself where sometimes the song comes on the station and maybe it's a little too much, and I'll just have it, I'll just tell it to skip or something. I've got the old A word set up over here, here at the academy over there. And I don't dare say her name or she'll activate, but it's the A one. But I'll just tell her to skip, go on the next song or turn it down a little or something. So it's definitely something I'm mindful of for the kids, and people, but it's really because, I'm the same way. Like, cause I do get overwhelmed if it's a little too loud. But honestly, at jiu-jitsu, it doesn't matter as much. I feel like that's kind of the gift of martial arts, is that you're burning off that energy. So it actually helps you get out of overwhelm because you're moving your body and it's such a somatic thing. And there's a ton of mental health benefits to martial arts that we can talk about. This is stuff I've learned about interviewing people on the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet podcast. Is there's a lot of neurochemicals that get released during jiu-jitsu and a lot of endorphins that get pumped throughout your body. And it also activates your vagus nerve system, which runs throughout your entire body. And all of this together actually helps the autistic person come out of the overwhelm that they're feeling. So they might start the session feeling super overwhelmed, like they can't be touched and it's too loud and maybe they don't even want to do this. And then they start moving and maybe they wrestle with someone and they get out some of that energy. And then all of a sudden it's their favorite thing and they're having a great time. So that's why jiu-jitsu is so great for mental health, because it actually takes you out of that panic state as you're throughout the course of one session. It's crazy.
Well, what I like about BJJ is that for me, whenever I roll, it always became a chess match, and it wasn't about the physical. It was more about, okay, you're thinking of triangles. I'm thinking of geometric things. I'm trying to outsmart the other person, and you're really saying nothing to the guy or girl, but it's more of a mental chess match than it is a physical. Because I've seen many times you might get a 300-pound guy get eaten up by a 150-pound guy on the floors because they're just in a different mindset. So talk about the mindset of a jiu-jitsu artist.
Well, you brought up resiliency earlier. I've been doing the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet podcast now since 2021, interviewing people, asking about how martial arts has helped them. And that's one of the main things that I've heard is people say they get resiliency from it. They learn how to overcome obstacles. And just about everyone has also said that they get an increase in confidence. And I think that comes from all of the different neurochemicals that I mentioned before, like dopamine or norepinephrine, serotonin. All of these things start getting pumped through your body. And men, and women too, it stimulates a healthy production of testosterone. So all of this leads to a feeling of confidence like you've never really felt before, because you've got all your brain chemistry aligned, and also you're learning how to kill people. So that increases confidence because now you feel like you can handle yourself. You can survive in a physical altercation. Like that brings a ton of confidence to someone. And then there's also, like I said, the element of being able to overcome adversity. Like a lot of people come to the martial arts and they're not really that tough, and maybe they haven't really been through much difficulty in their life. And then suddenly they're fighting for their life every single day. And 6 months later, they're a completely different person. And it feels like they've gone through some battle, but no one died. No one actually got hurt, but they still had that same transformation as if they had gone to a battle, if that makes sense. Like they're more stoic, they're more calm, they're more focused. They don't freak out about stuff that doesn't matter because they can put it into perspective. That's huge. One of my favorite quotes from the podcast, a guy named Josh Saunders came on, and he was saying that in his experience, no one who's been training jiu-jitsu is going to get mad that they ordered a latte and it had almond milk instead of oat milk. It's like you're never going to get pissed about the stupid stuff if you've been training jiu-jitsu. You'd be like, oh, whatever, put almond milk in my latte, who cares? Like, I'll get on with my life. You know what I mean? So it kind of eliminates all the small stuff, puts it into perspective.
And for me, I know that if I have to get in a fight with somebody, I will kill them. And I know that I can do that, but I don't want to do that. And I think that's what Bruce Lee said, something like that. It's the art of fighting, without wanting to fight. So and I tell everybody, if I have a Lamborghini, I don't have to do 150 miles an hour. I can cruise at 55 because I know it's going to cruise. I can do whatever I want with it. So if you have that self-confidence of saying, okay, yeah, if we fight, you're in trouble. I'm just going to walk away because you're the one that's going to get hurt, not me. Yeah. But also something I love about, like yourself, when I talk to Randy Couture, when you're in there with somebody and you're just rolling and it's not competition, you're also taking care of the other person. You're making sure that you can pull their arm out of the fucking socket, but you're not going to do that because you're just rolling. So talk about that mindset, because everybody thinks, oh, BJJ, or jiu-jitsu, everybody's trying to hurt each other. No, you're really taking care of that person because they're trusting you with their body, right?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu people, we understand very keenly, and not just jiu-jitsu people, but good, like martial artists in general, at least assuming you're training at a good spot with good people. But most of the people who do martial arts are good people, especially if it's a gym that's been around for a long time and has a good reputation. They're not going to hurt you just because they see the value in needing more training partners. Because if you've trained, you can't do it alone. It's not like yoga where I can go and do yoga by myself, right? Or weightlifting. I need a partner to train, right? So there's an element of selfishness to it that kind of actually keeps everyone safe. I mean, it does come from genuine empathy for sure. Like, obviously you don't want to hurt someone because you're a nice person, but you also know that if you hurt this person, you're going to lose a training partner, right? And you like training with this person, and you don't want them to miss training just as much as they also don't want to miss training, if that makes sense, because you need each other to train. If they're not there, your experience isn't as good, right? I mean, it's very, very keen. Like if someone's hurt in the training room, we all feel it because we miss that person and we miss training with them because they give a certain look, right? So there's like kind of that element of selfishness, but then also people are just nice people. They don't want to hurt you. They would feel terrible. Anytime that I've hurt someone, I feel horrible. Like, keep me up nights sometimes, like it sucks. It doesn't feel good. So if you're training in a good place, it's just going to come naturally. Like no one wants to just snap someone's arm unless they're complete sociopath. Like that's just, I think humans are a lot nicer than people give them credit for. Especially like in the few months that I've been teaching here, that's been one of the biggest things I've experienced. I haven't had to worry as much about someone like just snapping someone else's arm, but rather they usually don't want to do the technique forcefully enough because they're afraid that they're going to hurt someone. Yeah. No. So it's almost, and I have to tell them like, no, it's okay. You can squeeze a little tighter. Like it's okay. You squeeze a little more, put your hand here. It's okay. You get this a little tighter. Stuff like that. Like they purposefully do it a little loose because they don't want to hurt someone. So you have to almost train them out of it. You have to train them to be deadlier. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's normal. Like it's odd if someone's trying to hurt someone. That person usually gets kicked out of the gym because people don't want that. It's a very short-lived career. If you're going in there to hurt someone, you might last a day, and people are going to kick you out. They're going to beat you up. You're not going to want to come back, so Yeah, I would say it shouldn't be a reason to keep people away. Like the people that you meet on the mats are usually some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet.
Okay, so now we can also go from the mat to business to podcasting, because like for me, you know, once I was on your show and I learned how you did great things, then I started going on other shows, and then I hired John Lee Dumas to be my mentor, and now he's actually writing the acknowledgments to my book. He's actually writing the back cover, and he's going to be promoting it. But for me, I know that when I was taking martial arts, you know, once I got there and I started learning a little bit, I wanted to roll with the guys that were the best. I didn't want to roll with the guys that are the same as me, because I really can't learn from the same as me as I can learn with a master. Or so talk about that, whether it's business, podcasting, rolling on the mat, you know, trying to always be there with the best of them, because I always tell anybody, if I go in a room, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, because I know what I know, but I don't know what David Meltzer knows. I don't know what Sharon Lechter and Robert Kiyosaki know. So that's what I want to learn. And God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so I can listen twice as much as I speak. So talk about that as, you know, being humble and but wanting to be taught by the best.
Man, that's such a good question and very well said. I think that it's so critical. And so many people in martial arts, they get stuck just training at a subpar place because they want to feel like the badass. They want to feel like the toughest guy in the room. And also, they don't want to get challenged as much because maybe they're just using this to burn off some steam. And that's cool. I mean, there is something to be said for that, right? Like, not everyone wants to be world champion in jiu-jitsu or in business, right? Some people are cool with just being okay, just being okay at business, or they're cool with just being okay at jiu-jitsu, and they work a 9 to 5 somewhere. They work at Walmart, maybe they work at some factory, and they're just like, this is just how I burn off some steam. And that's cool. I'm never going to hate on someone for that. You know what I mean? Because I get it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like, if you just want to hang out at your jiu-jitsu club and you've got some good friends that you've been training with and you all like rolling together after work and you train 2 or 3 days a week, great. Like, that's awesome. You know, probably makes you a better dad, better, some self-defense, makes you better at your job, good stress relief, right? Like, just like going to the gym is great. Like, so I don't think there's a way that someone could I guess what I'm trying to say, I hope that what I'm about to say doesn't sound like I'm, bemoaning those people. Like, it's cool. If you just like training at your chill club, great. That's awesome. But if you want to be world class, if you want to be one of the best in the world, you have to seek it out, whether it's business or martial arts or anything. If you want to be a world class singer, like whatever, world class podcaster, you have to surround yourself with the best people. And like for me, opening up the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet Academy here, be so easy for me to just stay here and just train with these people, right? Like I'll always be the toughest person in the room for the most part, unless we get some dude who moves in from out of state who's trained before. But everyone who comes in here is a white belt, right? Like when they walk in. So I've been training 14 years. I could just stay here and just beat these guys up, and that could be it for me. And for a lot of teachers, I think that that's the case. They get their school, they get their thing, and then they're like, all right, that's it. I've got my students now, and I'm the master, and this is it. But for me, I'm just not like that. Like, I want to always be, like you said, I want to be the worst person in the room. I'm not, because I want to always get better, because I'm obsessed with jiu-jitsu. Like, I want to get better just for the sake of me loving it, but also because now I'm a teacher, right? So I don't want to be teaching inferior stuff. Like, if I'm teaching something, I want it to be really freaking good. It can't just be okay, because I guess that's just the standard I have. It has to be excellent. Like, that's something that was taught into me by the Army, by my parents. It's just kind of who I am. Like, I always have to do it really well. Otherwise, I don't even want to do it, So if you're like that, you have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to drive couple hours maybe to go train at one of the best gyms and get some rounds in with really good guys. Or if you're in business, you got to go hire like what you did, hiring John Lee Dumas, who's a podcaster that's way beyond where you are, right? Pay him. Don't just be like, oh, hey, can I take you out for coffee? Answer is no, you can't. He's busy. Got to pay him. You know what I mean? He's a professional. You don't just ask a lawyer, hey, can I take you out for coffee and ask you some questions about my legal case? Like, no, that's not how the society works. You know what I mean? And people want to hate on that and be like, oh, these successful people don't want to help me. It's like, no, they do want to help you. You just got to get around them. You got to go to them. They're not just going to come to you. You know what I mean? Like, that's why they have a YouTube channel. So you can watch them on YouTube. But if you want to go and like learn from them, you're going to have to invest the time and energy and money to do that. And it's worth it. You know, like that's the only way. And the thing too is they will tell you that that's what they did too. Like that's just how it works. There's no one who magically just arrived with all of this knowledge and all of this information. Like Gordon Ryan, who's the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, right? He didn't just wake up the best jiu-jitsu guy. Like he traveled all over, he trained, he would travel an hour each way to training every single day to train with the best school because he lived outside of New York City. And every morning he wake up at like 5 a.m, take the train. I think it was like an hour and a half total, taking the train, go train 3 times a day, take the train an hour and a half back at night all day. And that's all he did was jiu-jitsu. And for years. And then finally people start hearing about him when he's a brown belt and he's suddenly this overnight success, right? It's come out of nowhere underdog story. But meanwhile, he's been grinding for years, taking the train 3 hours a day, every single day for years before anyone knew who he was. Now he's this big star, you know, and if you go and you make the effort to go train with him, he has, you know, you could probably go get a private with him, maybe. I don't know. But like these people, you can just go and try to meet them and maybe hire them to teach you if you have the money. But most people aren't willing to do stuff like that because they think it's a waste of time. It's a scam. This rich person's going to scam them for their money or something. You know? And that's just not how it works. At least it's been my experience.
Well, like for my profession, my goal is to be the ultimate interviewer. I don't care about, you know, me being, I mean, I'm on a lot of podcasts and shows, but I'd rather be the ultimate interviewer. But like I seen Eric Allen, my friend Eric Allen, he was doing everything hard vertically. And I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And I texted him, I'm like, bro, how do you do that? He said, well, let me show you how to do it. But if I didn't humble myself and say, Eric, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me how to do this? And he did show me. And then, you know, I was talking with Alex Hormozy and Layla and their business partner. I'm like, how do you do all that crazy graphics and stuff? And they're like, well, let me show you. But I actually had to humble myself and say, hey, guys, I don't know what I'm doing. I need your help. How can you help me? And what can I do to help you? How can I support you? How can I support your mission? But I try to always add value first before asking for anything. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. You have to bring value to the equation. And what I found, though, great news, is that what people consider value is completely different. So like, for example, every Thursday, I've been going to Pedigo Submission Fighting in Illinois, which is a 4-hour drive. And Heath Pedigo, the coach there, you know, I asked him, hey, what do I owe you for training? And he was like, don't worry about it. You drive far enough. Like your gas money is enough, is what he told me. And I was like, wow, I really appreciate that. He didn't want my money, but he wanted my effort, my energy, right? He recognized that me driving my ass out there is like, I have skin in the game. That's what they want. They want you to have skin in the game. So that way they know that if they show you something, you're going to pay attention. You're going to remember it. They're not just wasting their time. Because that's what people, successful people especially, that's what they hate. They hate wasting their time. They hate showing you something and then 10 years later, you're doing the same shit. And they're like, man, I'm wasting my time with that guy. Because then it's frustrating. They feel bad. You know, that's what they don't like. If you're willing to put forth the effort and the energy and you show them that somehow, that might be it. They might not even ask you for a dime. You know what I mean? But you have to show up willing to pay. And if Heath messaged me right now and was like, hey, man, I changed my mind. You know, you owe me for training. I'd be like, cool, here you go. You deserve it. You know what I mean? So you have to have that energy. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that energy of like, I'm willing to give. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And most of the time, it's not going to take what you thought because they're going to help you out. But they just need to see that you get it, that you understand that this is an opportunity. It's not just, you know, people take stuff for granted. They feel entitled, feel so
But I
entitled.
also think that, you know, to give credit where credit is due. If
Yeah.
somebody showed me something, I'm like, I didn't come up with this. Somebody taught me. This is who taught me. And this way, you know, you're giving credit, and it lends them that, hey, they're promoting me, and because you're just showing, you're paying it forward. Like, I realize I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, so I'm just here to pay it forward and build relationships. Like, if I didn't have you on the show 5 years ago, I wasn't able to have Aaron Hale on the show last year. He wouldn't invited me on. You guys wouldn't got me on his show. So if we didn't build that initial relationship 5 years ago and keep building, then we wouldn't be where we're at today. And I think the same thing goes with on martial arts. That, you know, once you meet somebody that you really like and get along with on the mat, and then, hey, you know, that guy Paul, he's a good dude. Let me introduce you to so and so. Oh yeah, let me introduce you to him, and it becomes like a whole ecosystem. And I know, BJJ, it's a big field, but it's a very small field. So
Yep.
talk about that. It was relationship building.
Well, a podcast is huge for that. Podcast is the greatest networking tool you can possibly have. Like I just got to do a podcast with Brandon McCaffrin just before I came on this show. And we were talking about all the stuff he's doing with the PGF, which is the new grappling league that he's introduced to jiu-jitsu. And he's a busy dude. Like he's not going to have 30, 40 minutes to just call me on the phone and chat. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he might, I mean, that'd be cool. But at the end of the day, it's way more valuable for him if we record it and release it to help him promote his thing that he's trying to do, right? Versus him just calling to tell me about it. I mean, that'd be cool. I'd appreciate it. I'm sure we'd have a great chat. But how much better if we record it and then everyone else can also benefit, you know, from that information? Because what interests me is probably what interests anyone who's a fan of jiu-jitsu, right? So I can bring value by asking the types of questions that an average jiu-jitsu person would be asking, if that makes sense. That way he can field those questions and we can record it and he can get the word out about his thing he's trying to do, which is great. So you're going to be able to connect with people at a much deeper level if you do podcasts. And also if you, you'll have a better reason to speak with them. You'll be able to get more, you'll find more people are willing to have that conversation with you because it's more valuable. And what I try to do is I try to use it almost like my own research tool, so to speak. Like if I'm ever researching something, if there's something I want to learn more about, I go find an expert and I try to interview them. Like I just opened the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet Academy a couple months ago. My friend Mike Stewart is crushing it. He's got like 3 or 4 academies. He's probably making more in a month than I make all year, you know? So he's crushing it and he's been crushing it. So I hit him up and I was like, hey man, let's do an episode about how to run a good jiu-jitsu academy. And he said, great. And we're setting it up, you know, and I'm going to be able to ask him questions that will help a lot of people because there's a lot of people who want to open a jiu-jitsu school, right? So I can ask him questions that anyone who's opening a jiu-jitsu school would have. And they're also the same question. They happen to be the questions that I have too. But you know what I mean? So I learn and I get the answers to my questions, but I'm able to also help whoever else listens to that show. And Mike's been on my show before. And actually one of the people who opened an affiliate with him said that it was because they listened to our interview, you know, in the past. Like we did an episode years ago and that resulted in him opening a new location basically as an affiliate. So we've seen this magic happen already. So I know that this works. You know what I mean? I'm not just hypothesizing, like this has actually happened. So that's the kind of dynamic you want to set up with your podcast where you're the researcher, you're trying to go out there and figure out what it is that your audience wants to know and figure out who can you bring on to answer those questions. And more often than not, it's going to be the questions that you have, because you are that person. You are everyone else in a way.
Yeah.
And
Now, like whenever I moved to a new town, I would always go to the dojos, and I would shop the dojos. And when I went in, and they'd be like, "Well, what rank are you?" I'm like, "What belt are you?" I'm like, "I don't have one." And as soon as they said, "Oh, well, we can get you into this belt at this amount of time," I'm like, "I gotta go." I'm like, yeah, "I know this is you're just trying to sell belts." So, what is, for the average listener out there, what is a good jujitsu studio like, and what should they expect from a real jujitsu studio?
That's a great question, man. So I think that a big part of it is what you said, like that they don't emphasize the belts a whole lot. They don't really put a lot of importance on that, because at the end of the day, anyone who's been doing martial arts knows that the belt, main purpose of it is to hold your gi together. It's just a piece of cloth, essentially. That, I mean, honestly, you could buy it on Amazon, right? You want a jiu-jitsu black belt, you can buy it on Amazon. It's like $8, $10 or something. Obviously, it won't mean anything, but it's all about who it comes from. You know, a black belt that you get from one instructor does not equal a black belt from another instructor. And all belts are not created equally. Just because all schools are not created equally. And if you're looking at a good school, they should know that. They should have, I guess, a little bit of humility there, where it's not so much that here's what I'm saying, it's not something that's like obsessed over. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. It's like, oh yeah, you get the next belt, that's great. Still, you know, we're still here to work. Like, that's cool. But I mean, it's a cool thing. It's kind of like a gamification, and it helps people stay motivated. And I like that. I like the gamification aspect. But I also tell all the students that I train with that, and all people I train with, that, like, I'm a brown belt, sure. But if you put me in the Pedigo gym, for example, where I go on Thursdays, I will get destroyed by some of their white belts, some of their blue belts, who are super athletic, super motivated. They train 3 times a day, you know, stuff like that. Like, if you're going up against someone who's a professional athlete and they train 3 times a day, they might be a blue belt at their school. But it's just by comparison. Like, the belt system is almost just comparison within that academy. But a blue belt at one school might be a black belt at another school. You know what I mean? So it's all kind of up in the air. There isn't really like a set thing. So I'd say that, like, don't worry about the belts. And if the school is making a big deal out of it, it's probably not a great school. They probably haven't actually trained anywhere good. The other thing I'd say is they have to do a lot of sparring. There's a lot of martial arts schools these days, not just jiu-jitsu, but martial arts in general, where they spend most of the class, if not all of the class, just doing drills and techniques, and there's no actual live sparring. You need to have a good amount of live sparring. I would say at least 50-50, if not skewed a little bit more towards sparring, honestly. Like, most of the best schools that I've ever trained at, they spar a lot. Like, a lot. Sometimes the whole class is, we're just going to spar today, and that's it. We're just going to work on our technique, because that's learning it under pressure. Like, that's where it all clicks, and that's where it all comes together. And that's where you get a lot of the benefits that people talk about, like what I said earlier about getting more confidence, overcoming adversity. That doesn't come from just drilling techniques. It comes from sparring with someone and beating them up and tapping them out. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you get that confidence. It doesn't come from just drilling techniques with no resistance. You know, that's important. It's really important to drill technique. And I do a lot of it, do a lot of drilling technique. But I think that the drills and the games are a lot more important. And I think sparring is super important. And at most of the more advanced schools that I've been to, they spar more than they do technique by a lot. And that does make sense, because obviously they have more skilled people, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is definitely make sure that they're sparring a lot. That being said, you also want to make sure that they're taking care of each other during sparring. So we're sparring a lot, but we're also not trying to hurt our opponent. Like I was saying earlier when you were asking me about that, you know, we're taking care of each other. We're not making it so the other guy has to miss work tomorrow because he broke his arm, but we're going hard. We're pushing the pace. We're getting our heart rates up. We're really trying to beat each other. We're not just letting one guy win. That happens a lot at schools too. Like if you're rolling with a higher belt, they might just let you win, just to get you feeling good. Like, no, you gotta smash people. You gotta put them through the fire. That's why they're there. Like, yeah, I'm not saying beat them up every single roll, but you gotta show them the martial art. You gotta show them that this stuff works. And a lot of times that's what people say got them hooked on jiu-jitsu is someone beat their ass with jiu-jitsu and they were like, holy crap, this stuff works. It's like a magic trick, and they get impressed by it. So you don't want to, injure people, but on the other hand, you've got to put it on them. You've got to go at each other, and really like tap into that primal attitude, so if the school you're training at, if they're not doing that, if it's maybe, or even if maybe it's like 3 rolls at the end of class or something, but you don't actually roll with everyone there, that's a red flag for me. Like if I'm going to a school, I want to have like 30 minutes to an hour of sparring at the end of every class. If there's only 3 people there, then we should roll with everyone. We should get a couple rounds in maybe with every single person there if it's a smaller crew, So yeah, hope that answers your question.
No, definitely. And I love this. And Paul, brother, I just want to say thank you. I'm so humbled and grateful that we're able to chat. Now, my sensei, his name is Mr. David Piccioni. We haven't seen each other in 30 years. But when he was my sensei, and I still call him sensei, because he took an interest in me. And he knew I was struggling at one point, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "You're fucking around on your old lady, bro. That's not good." He's like, "You're going to lose everything. You need to get your life straight." And he didn't have to do that. He took me aside and said, "You got a good future. Don't fuck it up." So, and I still love the man 30 years later, just for him doing that one thing. So talk about how important mentorship is, whether it's martial arts, business, or just friendships, is having a good mentor that'll tell you, hey, you're not rolling the right way, or you're doing this the wrong way. And you're saying it because they care about you, not because they're trying to be hypercritical.
Yeah, man. So much of that stuff. Like it's so important to have good mentors and have people that you surround yourself who know more than you. Super important. I'd say it's essential, actually. Like I don't think that a self-coached person in a sport would beat a coached person. If the coached person is coached by the best coach in the world, they're going to beat someone who doesn't have a coach. It's like, I can't even think of a time where there's some athlete who beat another one and the one athlete didn't have a coach. It's like, you always want to have a coach. It's critical. You have to, because you need someone who's been further along than you to share the stuff that they know. I mean, it's so it's just a basic part of humanness, right? It's like the only space that we get human knowledge from is other humans. And if you have a human who's older than you and wiser and more experienced at something, and they've figured out something towards the end of their career, and they're willing to share that thing with you that they spent their whole career trying to figure out, and you can get that like 1 year into your career, or maybe even like 6 months into your career, it's a game changer. You know what I mean? Like it's a huge, huge deal. So you have people like the jiu-jitsu coach, John Danaher, for example, been coaching jiu-jitsu for decades, or my coach, Heath Pedigo, been doing it for 30 plus years. If he shows me something and he's figured this out recently after, or maybe it's something that he's worked on in the last 5 years, let's say, and it's something that he's developed, that he's figured out that works really well, and he can give that to me, and I don't have to spend 15 years figuring that thing out. Like that's a huge, huge deal. You know what I mean? So you need it. But that being said, I think there's also a lot of room for your own intuition and your own intelligence and your own autonomy. And I think a lot of times people do give away too much of that to coaches and mentors, and especially masterminds. I see that a lot with the masterminds, where masterminds have this like group think that emerges out of it, where it's like, oh, this is what we all do, just kind of like religions do with pastors and stuff like that. Like they put them up on a pedestal a little bit too much, and they forget that like that's not the message. The message wasn't worship the pastor. You know what I mean? Like that's that same sort of thing can develop sometimes with these coaches or mastermind leaders or these different groups. A lot of times I think that they it can develop into an unhealthy thing. And a lot of times I think people are afraid to do something unless they have a coach who signed off on it. Or if they, some mastermind guru that they found needs to give their blessing on this thing that you want to do. And if they talk shit about it, then you're not going to do it all of a sudden. Like, there needs to be some space for your own intuition and your own autonomy, where if you really feel like this is what you're supposed to do, and like for whatever reason deep in your being that you're supposed to do this thing, you should do it, even if every single mentor you have is telling you no, just because your own voice trumps that, in my opinion. But your own voice needs to be educated by those mentors, and it needs to be cultivated by those people. But there still needs to be that room for you. And also, I believe in God, and I believe in the spiritual nature of life too. So there needs to be room for that. And a lot of times I've encountered a mentor or some leader that I look up to who's saying something that conflicts with something that I hold to be like a spiritual value or a personal core value. And then I would never go against that. I would never go against something that I feel to be true from like a spiritual sense or just my core values. It doesnn't matter if Alex Hormozi says to do it, I'm not going to do it, but I'll listen to Alex talk about how to set up Facebook ads all day. But I think that's where people draw they cut a line, and I'm just using Hormozi as an example. I've learned so much from his channel, but there's a lot of people where if he says anything at all, it's like God came down and said that thing. And that's just not the case. You have to take it all with a grain of sand, and Alex Hormozi's never said he's God. He's never said, believe everything I say. Right. So I don't even think it's not even that he's trying to do that. It's just, it happens, right? Like when people put someone else up on a pedestal, it creates problems. So I think you need coaches, you need mentors, but you need to temper it against your own knowing, your own experience. Don't just believe blindly what everyone says. If your coach tells you to do something, try it out. If it works, great. Put it in your toolbox. If it conflicts with you and what you know to be true, don't do it. Ask them first. Ask them about something else. You're like, hey man, that didn't jive with me. Can you show me this? Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like you should be able to have that kind of feedback with your coach too. Be able to tell them like, hey man, it feels good.
I mean, even when, Bruce Lee came out with Jeet Kune Do, he studied with Gene LaBelle. He studied with this master, and he took what he can use and he got rid of everything that he didn't use. It's kind of like I was taught in the rooms of recovery, take what you need and let everything else go. And I think no matter what that is, if it's rolling on the ground, like for me when I was in the cage, I had fast hands. That's what I used to my advantage. So, going through in points, you had to throw a certain amount of kicks to start out with. So I would throw like three kicks in a row, not hitting anybody, and then using my hands because that was my strong point. And I think a lot of people, I mean, you have to work on your weak points, obviously, but I think a lot of people, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, you got to triple down on what you're good at to become great at it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So what is going on in Paul's world now? I know you got something coming up soon. You opened up your own academy. So what is going on in Paul's world and how can we support you?
Well, I appreciate that, man. Memorial Day weekend, we're doing a retreat here for men here at the academy. You can't really see, but I live here on this beautiful property, and we're turning it into a bit of an event center / martial arts academy. Well, really a martial arts academy that has events, I guess is a good way to think about it. But so we're going to be doing one over Memorial Day weekend where we're going to have people come out. It's going to be for men only, this one. We'll do another one for, both genders in the future, but this one's going to be men only. And we're going to train jiu-jitsu. We're going to be doing firearms training with an instructor. And we're going to be doing an adventure down the river, kind of like a floating, hiking sort of adventure. And we're just going to be camping out and enjoying each other's company, eating some good food. So if you want to learn about all of that, you can go to jiu-jitsuoutlet.com. and check it out. Although it's coming up on Memorial Day weekend. So if you're listening to this, you probably only have a couple weeks to register if you want to come. So definitely go there and check it out. And the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet podcast has been going strong since 2021. The podcast is actually the reason why I started all this stuff. Like, it started as just a podcast, and then started having so many conversations about how teaching martial arts was changing so many people's lives. And I thought, like, man, maybe I should teach martial arts. I've been doing this for a while. So I started the Jiu-Jitsu Outlet Academy, and we've got our location here in Houston, Missouri. So anyone can come train here. We do 6 classes a week, and we have a great time. So if you want, check out Jiu-Jitsu Outlet on all platforms. If you want to check out the podcast, it's all about how jiu-jitsu helps your mental health and your life off the mat. So if you've liked this conversation, you'll definitely like the show.
So is your original podcast still up on Apple and Spotify and all that?
Oh yeah, Beyond Homo Sapien was my my first show, and Beyond Homo Sapien still out there. We didn't even talk about any of that stuff, but that show is all about human evolution and the future of the species, and just about basically how to become a better version of yourself. But we get into a lot of magical stuff like developing psychic abilities, the future of consciousness, artificial intelligence. And I'll do more episodes of that in the future. I'm focused on Jiu-Jitsu Outlet right now because that's kind of where my heart is at.
And I love it. And I want to thank our sponsor. I didn't get a chance to talk about my friend Joey, as you can see up above. He actually helps people with their AI. He actually helps set up their AI. And he actually does all the background work where somebody like me can do all the good stuff that they're good at. He does the stuff that I'm not so good at. So guys, if you're more worried about being in the front of the office than in the back of the office, talk to my brother Joey Brown, and I'll drop that in the links. So Paul, brother, I just want to ask you one more question because Aaron Hale is a brother to both of us. And give us a quick down and dirty about Aaron Hale, because he is one of the most humble people that I've ever met, but he's one of the most inspirational people. So if you wouldn't mind just talking about that gentleman for a minute.
Yeah, of course. So Aaron's one of my clients. We also produce podcasts for people. It's something I do kind of in the background. But Aaron's one of the podcast clients, and we launched his show about 8 months ago, I think. And man, he's an amazing dude. He's a veteran who he unfortunately lost his hearing and sight after getting blown up overseas. He was an EOD tech, which means he disarmed bombs for a living, which is pretty badass in of itself. But he lost his sight and his hearing, and most people, that would kind of be the end of it, right? Like they might live out the rest of their life on the couch, being miserable, but not Aaron. He went and became a husband, father, and also started a real estate business and also a fudge company. You can buy his fudge, EOD connections, online. He's got an online fudge company. And so he made it as an entrepreneur, made it in real estate. And now he's doing public speaking and doing the podcast. So you can check it out. It's called Point of Impact with Aaron Hale. But dude, he just became the first blind and deaf person to run the 135-mile Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is crazy. So not only did he do all that stuff in his career, he also runs ultra marathons and competes in ultra endurance events over 100 miles, which is crazy. It's something that I probably won't ever have the balls to do, to be honest with you. And he's blind and deaf, and he managed to do it, which is crazy to me. So definitely trying to promote him and what he's doing every chance I get. So go check out Point of Impact with Aaron Hale. If you're listening to this, you'll definitely dig that show.
I love it, Paul. And guys, I want to let you know, I'm going to be telling you here first, the new book, the new course is available. The book isn't available. The course is available to take you from thought to profit for your podcast in 8 weeks. I spend 8 weeks personally teaching you how to become a top podcaster. And it's actually endorsed by Mr. John Lee Dumas. So, guys, and if you're looking to start a podcast, just let me know and I'll get that information to you. Paul, brother, I just want to say thank you for your friendship and support all these years. And without you, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So I want to say thank you for your friendship and your mentorship.
Well, thank you, Richard. The same to you, man. I learned so much from you, dude. And yeah, I also just want to say that I've taught a lot of people about podcasting. And out of all those people, you're the one who I think applied it the most. Like you really just took so much action on everything and created a pretty amazing show, man. Like out of everyone I've worked with, dude, your show is like, it's just a testament to the amount of action that you take. Most people, they're not able or willing, or for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen in the same way. You know, they don't commit to the process as much. So, dude, keep it up.
I love you. Like I said, I've spent over $50,000 in courses with you, Zach Babcock, Travis Johnson, John Lee Dumas, Gary Vaynerchuk. So, guys, if I'm going to invest in me, you need to invest in you, just like Paul said. Paul, my brother, have an amazing week, and I can't wait to see what you got next. And hopefully, when I get out your way, I'd love to come out and take you out for lunch.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let me know. Be
All right, brother. Have a great week, and I know you got a class coming up, so I want to make sure you get in class in time.
Well, thanks, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Just let me know if you need anything.
I love you, brother.
Love you too, man. Appreciate it.